Hi all, good morning once again. Welcome to another Cascade and Coffee. Thank you for joining us. My name is Eddie and I'm joined with Roland. He's gonna help us out in the chat. Alrighty. Am I sharing my screen?
Yeah, we can see it. Thank you.
Okay, cool. We got one more person. Good morning.
And just, Eddie, whenever you're ready to start recording, just want to remind you.
Oh, I think it's already recording.
Okay, I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, cool. Alrighty. Can everyone see my screen? I'm showing a Word document that says types of content rows. Can everyone see it? Yes. Awesome. Okay, guys, thank you for joining us for Friday's session. And today we're going to go over the types of content rows. Every time we edit a page, or when we go to create a new page, we get some presentation options to show our content. So let's go into our Department of Sample. Everybody here works for the Department of Sample, of course. And we're looking at this page. First, let's go look over it, and then we'll talk about each item one by one. So if you've seen our previous sessions, let me just go over it right away. When you go to the triple dot more, every time you're looking at a page, you go over here to these three little dots and go to the more. Let's go and see the full screen preview just so we can get a simulation of what the page would look like if it was live. Somebody serenading us. Okay, so every time we open a page, like I said, you are given different options to present your content. Right now, it is invisible, but if you can kind of imagine this box that I'm creating around the content, this would be a row. And the row in this case goes all the way down here. This would be one row, and this would be called a feature text row. If you've already gone in there and examined some web pages, you'll see that this is one of the options that is given to you when you choose a content row. It'll tell you, would you like to use feature text? And that is a very flexible type of content presentation that you can put. It lets you put HTML, and it lets you put Bootstrap code inside that HTML. And we'll look over into that in a minute. Just going over the outline for now. This is also part of the feature text, and we'll see it. This is a different type of content row, which is called a content panel with background. Just to look over it, it has a background image, and then over it, we have some content that we could play with. It's a very good one too, because it also includes a WYSIWYG area. The what you see is what you get area, and we'll go over into that in a minute. This is a content panel with background. Right underneath, we have another type of content row, and this one is called the content panel. And a content panel is a way of putting some hyperlinks into your site. If you want a prominent way of showing a link that says, oh, check out this bit of research, or let's say you have a running article And then at the end, you kind of want to break up the monotony and throw in a link that says, for more information, check this out. Once your end user, your viewer is scrolling down, they might stop in and look at that content panel that has this big fancy hyperlink on it. And we'll go over that in a second too. And then lastly, we have what's called a grid builder. And a grid builder is a much more elaborate way of presenting content. And it yields some very nice results, but it is a little labor intensive. So, but of course we're gonna be going over that too. And it's really neat because it lets you put a little image with a hover effect and more info into it. So it's very cool. And we're gonna go over these different types of content rows. All right, so let's get this out of the way. So we have been viewing the full screen preview, and we're going to be getting rid of that. All right. Okay. So let's go back to our home page. Anytime, let me just point this out. Anytime you want to go back to your main directory, and if anybody that's is familiar with file managing inside a website, your main directory is where the browser goes to first. And the very first thing that a browser looks for, of course, is your index page, right? So anytime you want to see the main directory of your website, just come up here and click Site Content. It'll refresh the last thing you did. I always like to sort things by order. It's just the way that I like to organize my pages, and putting the index one at the very top. But today we're not going to work on the index. Today we're going to look at these content rows. All right, do we have any questions so far before we get into the nitty gritty? Any comments, anything you want to clear up? All righty. So we click the edit to get into the interface. And we're looking at content rows. As I was outlining earlier, this was the feature text. Shrink the next one. This is a content panel with background that we all went over. And so these cool little arrows, which in my opinion, they should be at the top, not underneath the content row. So we got these 4 areas, right? So let's dive into each one. So in the feature text, you're given the option to add a sidebar, and it's just like a little sidebar navigation. I opted for no, but we'll look into it later if you want. But right now, let's look at the content area that is unlocked with your feature text. Naturally, you want to put another type of heading. And here is where we have some columns. Now, they're invisible here because Bootstrap is code that goes inside HTML. I'll go over it in a second, but these are it. These are the Bootstrap elements that are being used to make these columns. We have this one that's split into 2 of 2 columns, and this one that's split into 3 columns. And we'll go over it in a second. So that's the feature text block. See how it ends right here? That's because this one is also part of it. So let's talk a little bit. Let's see, there's that first one, the one that said heading, and here's the one that said buttons. So they're both part of the same content row, but there are 2 items inside that row. So sometimes you guys just keep in mind that when you make a content row, there you can put additional content blocks. I don't know what we can call them, but we can put additional sections inside that row, but it'll still be part of that feature text option. And I have two of them here. I have the buttons one, and I have the ones with the columns. Okay, we're going to talk about Bootstrap columns now. So as you can see here, everything looks like it's just run-on paragraphs, and there's an insertion here that I made. I inserted a line just to show where the division is between the rows. So what we need to keep in mind whenever we have, whenever we're going to talk about Bootstrap columns, is that Bootstrap divides a row into 12 sections, and here I'm going to show you here. For more info on Bootstrap's grids, see here. So let's click it. It's going to take me, I really should have done this in the full screen preview to take me to an outside page. Let me go back to that. All right, so we're going to dive deep a little bit into the Bootstrap stuff. And this is a nice little handy hyperlink. I keep handy. I'm sorry for being repetitive. And I'm going to chat it to everybody right now so you can check it out when you have time. But this is the page that I'm looking at right now. It is a very good resource of information if you want to get deep into some CSS styles and HTML. But what we're looking about right now, what we're talking about are these columns. So everything is divided you occupy 6 sections, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and that'll give you half of the entire row.
Hey, Eddie, we lost you for, or at least I did, lost you for like 15 seconds.
Okay, what would you like to, what did you lose me at?
You were just starting to explain I just came in, you said 6 something, I'm sorry.
Yes, we're gonna occupy 6 of these columns so that it takes up half of the whole row. So a row in Bootstrap is divided in 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you can see there's 12 sections. And so the examples that we are shown right here, this one is taking up 8 spaces. See this one here? It's taking up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, all the way over here. And that's why it shows as this size of the row. The other one is taking up 4. Now, the way I have them here is divided into 2. So we have half of 12 is 6. So that is what I'm doing here, and let me show you. So you guys have that visual of the 2 dividing, of a row being divided in 2. Now you can't see it here again because the Bootstrap is in the code. And I'm sorry, I know it looks a little overwhelming, but don't worry. Most of this is just that Pig Latin text. What I'm talking about is this right here. So we have a container, a div, which is a very, very simple div tag, just a little division. And then that has one row right here. And that row has those 2 columns. Those 2 columns are designated right here because this column occupies 6 whenever the display is small. This other one also occupies 6. So the result is you get 12. And when they add up, they make the entire row. Let's see what that looks like. So this is why these are getting divided to 2. And I just showed you 1 row. So right here, we have this one row, and then that division line, this little horizontal divider. In the code, it's this row. And don't feel like you have to absorb all of this right away. Just showing you how the Bootstrap code reflects. So this is one row, but it's still inside that container. I also have that dividing line, and then the next row, which is the exact same thing. It literally is just a copy and paste of the same row, and it just shows up twice. Closes up the container up here. This container is closed right here. Then we have another dividing line, which is this one. And now we're going to look at 3 columns, 1, 2, 3, and then I'll show you what that looks like right here.
Hey, Eddie.
So the row, yes, sir.
Sorry, just real quick. We did have a question from Teresa, and she's asking about what if we're using a display with a medium or large. So instead of the column being small like SM, she's just wondering about medium or large. how
Those are other options that you can give, and to be very specific, you can tell it, well, when I want it to be, when the display is large, we can have it occupy all 12, and I'll show you how that works. We'll tamper with the code and we'll add medium, we'll add large, we'll add in different numbers that you'd like, and we'll experiment, and so we can see what they all look like. But let's take it step by step, and let's look at how we divide something by 3 columns. Naturally, if you divide 12 by 3, we get 4, and so what we're doing here is we are designating that each column only occupy 4 areas. This one occupies 4, this one occupies 4, and so does this one. And the result is that we get these. Here it is. And this one says when the display is extra small, it'll occupy 6, and the display is medium, it'll occupy 4. Right now, the display is considered, I guess, medium or medium to large. So that's why it's occupying 4. But let me let me highlight it. This is the row that it has that additional tag that you were talking about, extra small. And we're going to shrink it down. See, shrinking it, oh, see, and now it's already changing the display. Where's the area I highlighted? So see, now when the display is extra small, the column is allocated 6 units. So it is dividing it here in half. See how it's got this one occupying 6, and it's got this one occupying 6. But the third one also is given the instruction to occupy 6, so it gets kicked back. It gets kicked under. See that? If the display is extra small, as it is now, then each column is given a 6. Once it gets back to medium, see right there, still extra small, so it's still occupying 6. We're going to stretch it out little by little by little until we get to the medium. And there it is. Now, when the display is small, I guess, I'm sorry, it's misspeaking, instead of extra small. Now, each column is given 4 spaces. So what you were questioning, Teresa, is an additional detail that you can give to the code to be even further specific. This one was probably meant to, occupy 3 spaces, but, and I'm sorry if I'm being redundant, but when we squeeze it down, then it's given, I guess, quote unquote, permission to occupy 6. So 6, 6, and then, oh boy, there's no more 6 because the limit is 12. Okay, we'll just kick it underneath. Boop, and it goes under there. Hope that clarified a little bit, but let's see how it works in practice. So once again, we open it up with a container. Inside that container, we can have as many rows as we want, as we had right here. We had two. We had one here, and we had two here. But in this particular container, I only have one row. So I open up a container. I start off with the row, and that row, the first column, I'm going to give it the permission to occupy 4 units when the display is small. The next column, let's say I want to give this one 6. I'm going to give it 6 spaces to occupy. Now that only leaves 4 plus 6, it only leaves 2 for the next one. So let's give it 2. And let's see what that looks like. There's still going to be 3 columns, but they're going to be uneven. Let's see what they look like. And so that's how you can play with the sizes of Bootstrap's columns. As you can see, this one was given 4 spaces to occupy. So it would be 1/3 of the column. This one's given 6 spaces to occupy, so it took up a whole half. And the only thing that was left was 2 12ths, 1/6 of the column for the last one. See, so you can get the results that you'd like. I did not specify anything for a large display, so it keeps the same designations. Even if I get large or extra large, it's still going to obey the same designations of a small display. So the fact that I didn't specify, oh, please, when you go to medium, do this. When it goes to large, do that. It'll just carry on with what you had left it. You can get further specific if you'd like, so that if this is bigger and bigger, I'll give all of these bigger spaces. But if they get smaller, then they'll just occupy all 12.
Hey, Eddie. We do have a couple of questions. One's from Sashi. The question is, how does it adjust for best viewing based on the device, whether it's a laptop or mobile screen size?
Well, that really is depending on the device. That's why the terms are pretty generic: small, medium, extra small, large. So if your end user is using a very small phone, it'll probably go to the XS. And if they are using a large desktop screen, it'll probably use XL. So it is very subjective. It is not a, there's not a standard. I mean, there might be, I'm sure this will probably provide you the details of display sizes and which one is considered XS, which one's considered SM. I do not know those details because I don't think it's that important. As long as you give the specifics enough to make a flexible display, then you'll get by.
If you go to grid options, it shows you the exact pixel breakpoints.
Grid options.
Yeah, so
There you go,
just
guys.
a little bit.
Right. So there you go. Get that link and look for those specifics if you need them. So that's
Sorry, just one other thing. Laura Ramirez is asking if Cascade gives you an error if the number of columns don't add up to a 12. If you're not specifying, you know.
No, I think you'll just see some wacky displays. It'll probably try and force what you do it. It'll give you a blank column. Well, let's see what happens. In fact, that's a good question. Let's see what happens if we give it, if they don't add up to 12. Do you want to make it shorter or go over? If they go over, it'll probably just get kicked under. So let's just give them all a 3. So yeah, it seems like you'll get some leftover space if you don't occupy all 12 areas. So they will obey you. They'll tell you, I'm only occupying 3. I'm only occupying 3. well, there's, you know, another 3 left over, so whatever. So, you know, it apparently won't give you an error. That's one way. That is probably the best way of doing columns. You can refer here to get the specific codes of the size of display you need. And here is where you insert it once again. Would you like to try another designation? Maybe let's see how it would look on a large display. We'll give it, for a large display, it'll take up 4. But on a small display, it'll take up, yes, 6. Which makes sense because when you're shrinking it, you want it to use more of your real estate. So this is a large display, and you know what, let me submit it so I can do the full screen. And that's another thing to remember. One time you'll, I got a little carried away just doing the edit and previewing, editing and previewing, and before I knew it, I didn't even know what version I was at. So once in a while, click submit to save your draft, and then if you have on another tab a full screen preview going on, reload it, and you'll see your latest change. All right, let's shrink this one down. So once it gets, I guess now it's considered it small at this point, and it's given all of them 6 spaces. It doesn't break anything if you go over 12, it just kicks it underneath. So the number 12 is just for you to keep in mind. It's not a deal breaker, but it is the span of the row. It won't give you errors, but it'll make your display behave differently. And yeah, here we have the last of the 3 columns being kicked underneath. All right, give me 1 second. All right. So that was the Bootstrap column stuff. Next, we're going to be looking into the content panel with background. And the content panel with background lets you choose a nice little image. And I'm just browsing at the images that are available here at the Department of Sample. And what you want to do is you want to get a nice big image. That's why it's taking a little while to load. So when you find an image, well, I'll change it up. I'll choose this one. You need to put a little description of it. Don't forget. And what's this going to do is going to put a very large background. If it's small, it'll probably repeat it and give you a cool little display using that as a background. And then you can put some text over it. Nice little thing to break up if you have a lot of text like I do here, and then you kind of want to vary it up and do this. Oh, I skipped over the button stuff. Do you guys want to check out the buttons?
Yes.
Buttons. So sometimes when you have like a little call to action, a you want to use these things sparingly, not be so frivolous like I am using them here. We have this cool little designation that you can give to your hyperlinks. This is a hyperlink in href, but we can apply a class to it to give it that button look. And what it is really, it's just a hyperlink. And on that hyperlink, we give it a class. So we have a hyperlink that goes, well, it doesn't go anywhere. That's just a little stand-in. And then we give it a class that's called the BTN. Oops, I'm mistyping over here. BTN-primary. So think of it, I'm giving it a button class, and what kind of button? A primary button. I pretty much just edited that hyperlink that I created. Let me do that again. Make it a link, wherever that's going to take you to, a survey or whatever it is, another page. We look at the code of that link that we just made, and we give it a class. What kind of class? Button class. What kind of button? This one's going to be a default button. These are the two main ones, well, really the two only ones that we have, primary and default. And that lets you make, the primary lets you make a big button, and the default is just a regular button. It's the same one that I use right here. So sometimes, you know, it'd be cool to put a little button. It's the same one that we also have here as part of the template. And that's the primary one. And again, you know, you want to be, use these for special occasions, not be so button heavy on things. And this one is just a regular hyperlink with no button to it. So check these out over here on the types of contents if you want to copy some of that code, or if you want to just copy the whole page entirely, you can find your site over here. Since we all have access to the Department of Sample, you can browse and see what your other site that you've been working on, and just choose it over there and copy it on over, give it a different name, obviously, because it's site. We can call it content samples, and we'll export this page. We're just copying it over to the training playground. And when I go back to that other site, I'll play around with that thing and mess around with it and all that. If you don't want to come over here and copy the code yourself, just take the whole page. All right, next. Let's check out this content panel. So the content panel is kind of related to buttons. They're fancy hyperlinks. And we have 3 of them here. Let's remove them. We're gonna do them from scratch. Content panel. X that out. Okay, so we just looked over the content panel with background. Let me add one more thing. And we're gonna add content panel. Title, well, let's see what a title would look like. Content panel title. And inside that content panel row, we're gonna put panel. It should be just called a link. This is gonna be the highlighted part, the call to action. Whatever phrasing you want to use to draw attention. Here is the area that's going to take them to. So you will type a URL right here. And here's like a brief little blurb. to elaborate on what link you're trying to push your audience to. So it separates the content above it, and inside it gives a little box, a heading if you want to. I don't think that's necessary. It could just be blank. And then it just has a nice little call out like, hey, check this out. Please click me. Oh, what is it? It's a survey. Okay, cool. I'm gonna click it. I think we can put more stuff in there too if you have other options. Let's inside that row, let's put another link. And I think it should be on the same rows. Right underneath. Let's see what the image one looks like. I think I'll do another row, so it'll be underneath. And I lost it. Okay, here it is. Content panel, another content panel, and this time let's see what the image one would look like. Let's choose a small image. In your assets, in your images, we'll put, these are pretty big. I'll just use the logo. Alt text always, we make it obligatory because we want machine readers to be able to identify images that we put on our websites, and it'll pass accessibility standards. So we always want to have alt. So that's just an image. I guess it's not that interesting. Probably be more interesting if it was inside that row. But there's another option for you to use these. The way I've used them in the past, you've probably seen them in our welcome page, where we have like a brief description of something, and then right here, here's a content panel with some links that are advisory, you know, please check this stuff out.
How do you get them to go horizontal like that instead of stacking?
I don't know. I thought they were
vertically?
supposed to do it here. To be honest, I'm a little puzzled at that. I'll probably go look into this one, see how that. I mean, it was supposed to done them like that here. I don't know why it didn't.
Yeah, I don't see any like option widgets or anything to specify a
Yeah, it's supposed to
class
do
or
it. It's supposed to line them up on the row. I really don't know why it did not. But they're there. We have some cool little hyperlinks. Now we're going to check out the grid builder. Now this one's a little bit more elaborate, so I recommend you take a sip of your coffee. So this is a really cool one. Roland, I'm going to show them what you were working on.
Yeah.
So they could see some tests that you can be very elaborate with that grid. And these are some images that are put to be in the background. And when you hover over it, it gives you more info and stuff. It's possible to line them up so they all make like a collage. We've seen it, let's see, here on the campuses. This is a page I copied over from the main NMSU site. And this is a grid right here that's being used. What you wanna, the only thing really to keep in mind with a grid is that a grid operates in three. It divides everything by three. So every row needs to have three spots to occupy it. Right here on this row, I have one spot that uses an image, and I have two spots that occupy just text. So it's using, this part is occupying 2 units, and then this spot is occupying 1. And that gives me the 1, 2, 3. Right here, there we have 3 images, 1, 2, 3 images. And then this one is just 1 image, and in an area that is blank that is occupying 2. So this is like a 3 by 3 grid, but through optical illusion, it looks like it's like a nice little Tetris shape. And I'll show it's made. The cool thing is, what you want to have already are some nice images that have the same height. And I'll show you why. Let's look into the back to the content rows. And this grid builder is only 1 row that has 1 image and 1 area of text. Let's take a look at it. So here's the grid builder. Let me minimize the other stuff. So, and there's 2 items, like I said below. There is an image that has the overlay and the large content. The image is at Oregon Mountain. And the other stuff is a really flexible WYSIWYG area that you can put almost anything into it. And the size of that is 2. So let's make that from scratch. I'm gonna submit this. There's that Oregon Mountain image that I use. And we're gonna do it up from scratch. All right, so X that out. Shrink everything else. And we're gonna add a content row. Let's build a grid. And it's called the grid builder because you spend a lot of time building it. So our very first item, we'll put an image. Let's look for that cool mountain image. Always describe it. And this will be the heading that'll be overlaid on it. Caption, just need some whatever text. URL to take them to. Now that is just 1 item. If I were to do a try and submit it now, it'll probably give me an error because the grid requires at least 3 items. So the next item I'm going to do is some large content. And this will just be some text. And I'm just gonna type some gibberish. Pick a heading on this thing. Pseudo paragraph, keyboard smash. And this one is gonna occupy 2 spaces. It explains it right here, but an image occupies 1, and large content can occupy 1 or 2. So the 1 plus 2 is going to give me 3, and that'll round out the row. And there's an image with overlay with the mountain, the heading. The heading stays on it and when you hover over it. So it's overlaid there, but once I hover over it, it comes up and there's that little bit of a blurb that you can add to it. And here's the large content that occupies 2 spaces with a heading that I put in the WYSIWYG and your fancy eloquent text there. Just by itself, that one row is not very appealing, so let's add some more items to it, and just so you guys can see the full extent of this. So 1 out of 2, 2 out of 2, that occupies 2, that makes 1 row. We're gonna go to the next row now. And I'm hoping I'm not losing anyone because it's kind of quiet over there. Yeah, okay. Grid item 1, 2, and 3. I've already added 3 because I know that I'm gonna need 3 items. And I know that I wanna use images on all of them. So having already prepared some images that are of a similar height, I go into my image folder and I look for them. Let's see which ones are a similar height actually. These, let's use the Mesilla one. With a call to action. That's 1 image. Let's put in the next. Let's add, I have 2 of those. I could actually repeat it if I'm talking about the same thing. And my 3rd item. And a link. Let's see what it looks like. So the next row that I had made is just all images. And I made sure that I added 3 and that they were of similar height. And the result is a cool row of 3 images that have the perfect height. And so they all match up perfectly. And you have this cool little grid that's got a lot of cool images, hoverable text. That'll take me somewhere. And then pop up a little blurb when I hover over it. Pretty cool, huh?
So just to clarify, so apparently it's only the large content grid item that has built-in padding and margins, because it looks like the images butt up next to each other. So I was wondering.
Oh yes, no, everything is butt up against each other. Yeah, this one does have it does appear to have some built-in padding next to it. Let's test that out, and we could probably change the direction of it and have this large content move up, and let's see how it looks on the far left.
The main reason I was asking is if I wanted 1 image to span 2 grid items, but I guess, you know, I'd have to split the image manually. Yeah.
So let me see, I moved this thing over to the left, and let me see if the padding is still there. Yeah, it's got some left padding, but not some right padding. But again, since that is a WYSIWYG area, you can insert your own padding in there. You can get in here and make this whole thing a container and then just add padding or whatever to it. That's because this large content is very flexible. I think if you use feature text, hold oh, look, this one will occupy 2 spaces and it lets you insert an image. So let's try that. Let's see what that looks like. I haven't really used that one.
Hey, Eddie, I have a question.
Mhm.
What happens if you have pictures of different sizes?
Then the grid won't look even. You'll have
Oh.
some white spaces underneath and stuff.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, this one can occupy, but it's also got a padding. I don't recommend you use this one. But yeah, I mean, maybe you'll be able to make it work, or we might need to fix something on here.
You could take an image and split it into 2 separate, the left and right half,
Yeah,
probably.
yeah, and see, this is what happens when you don't get an image of the same height. I'm sorry, whomever asked the last question. Then you'll get this big gaping hole on the next item that isn't of the same height. So yeah, if I didn't like the way that looked, I'm just gonna discard that last draft. And this is what it looks like on a full screen preview. Let's see how it behaves. Yeah, so it kicks the grids as the display gets smaller. So there is definitely padding around that. So this is a very good one to use then, that large content, because it accommodates itself. And that's as small as it gets. But normally, medium to large display, it'll give you some really nice results. As seen here. This is the large content, and a few more images that are the same height. An empty area here. And then this is probably feature text that just carries it over. Yeah, there's, oh, it's an image with overlay. So this is the grid builder that is being used for the campus stuff. Here's a feature text that's right underneath. And I just discovered how to collapse them from up here. There's a grid builder and so on. So you can see, oh, let's go over these since we got, well, no, our time is running out. But next time we'll go over the feature cards. Do you have any questions? Something you'd like to retouch over? That hour went by fast.